tell us your perspective of that tragic last chapter.
Well, in some ways, him being deployed to Iraq is the final tragic sort of outgrowth of his charm, because it was in fact his meeting with George Bush in early March, 2 to 3 weeks ahead of the invasion 5 years ago, in which Sergio made such a favorable impression on our president that it was Bush, in fact, more than Annan and Blair, as we said, less on the basis of charm and more on the basis of performance. But they both Blair and Bush, believed that Sergio was, which he was, the go-to guy. And Bush had never met a UN official with whom he had any chemistry. Sergio came into this meeting, had a whole list of things he wanted to talk to the president about: Guantanamo, torture, the Geneva Conventions, the International Criminal Court, and yet instinctively, just as he brought, whatever the New York Review of Books to Karadzic, he knew that that was going to be a difficult conversation. Guantanamo, torture, etc. So he starts the meeting. Bush grabs his shoulder, and Sergio's a buff guy, and Bush says, "Wow, you must work out." It was a long conversation about their workout regimens. Then they sit down, and then Sergio boasts about the policy I mentioned earlier, which is the UN's shoot-to-kill policy in East Timor that they put in place in order to prevent these incursions. And Bush is like, "Wow, this is a High Commissioner for Human Rights." And then Sergio pivots effortlessly to Guantanamo, to torture, to the International Criminal Court. But the whole vibe was from the position of, "Sir, this is not, Mr. President, this is not in your interest. Terrorist recruitment is increasing as a result of your deviation from international norms. The International Criminal Court can be a place where people who will not be extradited to the United States will eventually be extraditable. It's in the United States' interest for there to be enforceable rules of the road with regard to war criminals and people who commit crimes against humanity." And it's just like, boy, Bush is having these conversations, and he's not on his heels, and he comments to everybody around him how impressed he was. And then what happens is, people forget this, but I certainly did, in the wake of the U.S. invasion, we now joke about mission accomplished, but there was a sense that the war part of the war had gone well, better than expected. There was a sense among diplomats at the United Nations in New York who had opposed the war, French, German, Spanish, Chilean, you name it, Spanish, I guess, before, Chilean, Mexican, of being chastened, of having gotten it wrong, of having predicted all these doomsday scenarios, and you had, of course, American officials voting about how well everything had gone. And I mention this to answer your question because it's a moment to freeze. Americans feeling very confident, continental Europeans who opposed the war feeling chastened, and even the Bush administration, but especially the Europeans, really wanting to kiss and make up. Not wanting this degree of polarization within the Western alliance to persist. The British playing an intermediary role, trying to make that happen. And the form that set of political desires took was a UN Security Council resolution that, in a sense, authorized the occupation. It was the first time. Do you remember when it used to be politically, if you're making a political statement, if you called it an occupation? Well, that all changed at the end of May when the United States and the other European countries, Russia and China, came together and put in place a resolution saying this is a legal occupation that carries with it certain benefits, and then you get to be Paul Bremer, but it carries with it, certain obligations as well, and that you don't get to do a whole set of things. Part of that, and this was very much on British urging, part of the fine print of it was to say, and we will send a UN envoy to Iraq in order to, in a way, be the representative of the world that cares about Iraq, to be the middleman between the Iraqi people who are understandably skeptical and confused as to what's happening and the administration that doesn't have a whole lot to